Of course, this is a very powerful movie. Unfortunately, I'd like to say otherwise, but unfortunately, I think the impact within Israeli society was not massive. I can't tell you, how many Israelis actually have watched the film, in terms of numbers. Some, of course, did, but it wasn't aired on any mainstream television channel, of course, and people had to actually make sort of an effort to see it. I mean, talking about large quantities. Again, I'm sure that some people, like myself, like others, have seen it. Also, after they won the prize, I'm sure many people heard, more about it and went and see it and saw it. But generally speaking, most of the public didn't. And most of the public also has no idea what the film is about. It's not that they did not see the movie. It's not that they don't know what the movie is about. They also don't know what the reality is about. They have no idea what's happening on behalf, of them, whether taxes are being funding in the West Bank. Even after these 2 years of war, most Israelis also have no idea what's happening in Gaza. They just don't know. And you can say it's not. You can say, okay, they don't know as an excuse, right, for lack of action or whatever. But they don't know because they don't want to know. Um,
Why would you say that's the case? Is it that they choose not to find out, or it's not made very accessible to them?
Both. I mean, both are true. It is accessible if you choose to look for it, or some people who do read international media, etc., are exposed to it, but they refuse to know because it's for some a self-protection mechanism, and for others they just refuse to believe it. They think everything is propaganda. Look, for Israelis, the occupation is a painful issue because a lot of them are, in the end, complicit in all sorts of ways. Israelis have to go to the military, apart from ultra-Orthodox people or certain parts of the population that get accepted for all sorts of reasons, or people that also refuse from a moral point of view, which is very, very few. But generally speaking, most people, they go to the military. There's an ethos in the Israeli society that's very militaristic. The average Israeli who sends his children to the military, he believes that everyone should take part in protecting Israel, and it's very, very hard for them to imagine their parents, their children, their nephews, their uncles, whoever it is, as war criminals. It's very, very hard to face these realities. They want to believe, most people, even if they do believe and they do oppose crimes that they recognize as crimes, they still want to believe that their children or their relatives, friends, everyone they know did not take part of these events, and that they are kind of like extreme situations, disconnected from the what the military or the country intends to do. So I think, again, for most Israelis, it's not only that unfortunately the film did not have an impact on them, it's that they also do not follow reality and what's happening, whether it's, just from the news or from different, some news outlets that do cover these issues. So yes, many people, they read Haaretz, and people read 972, if people in the audience are familiar with them, which Yuval Avram, is part of, and they're doing great work. And there's also international media. You have the resources, but still many Israelis choose not to know.
Can I just ask you? Yeah, we obviously explore that a bit more. The two reporters, Yuval and Basil. What is like? I mean, so you're saying life hasn't changed for them very much, and is it more difficult for them to work because they're a bit more well known?
So I actually asked Yuval before our discussion. I wanted to know, what he's saying about his life after the film.
Yeah.
He says that the film did not change their lives substantially, and they're still doing the same thing they did before, generally speaking. Some would recognize them in the street. Unfortunately, Basel is now recognized both by settlers and soldiers, not just fans in the streets. And there's also, more people pay attention. Those who do know them and the film do pay attention more to the things that, they publish. But talking about Masfariata, the situation is actually worse than when the film was shot, especially when you talk about settlers' violence. It's not that the situation deteriorated because of the movie, but just because of reality.
Yeah. So yeah, I was going to ask you about Massa Pediatra. I mean, is it his village is gone now, I'm presuming, and is it and the IDF is closing off areas. Is that ongoing now? And what do people think?
Yes, the situation is actually worse. They've been tightening the control of the village. So yes, it's one of these circumstances where a public kind of focus on the area that didn't really, again, unfortunately, didn't really help people there, but um, because Israel is not shamed by this film, so it doesn't really stop the action there.
No. And but where do people in the West Bank, Israelis in the West Bank, and people who are involved in these things, where do they expect the Palestinians to go? I mean, it's like the no other land.
That's a really good question. It depends who you ask. So some people in Israel still believe in a two-state solution. Some people do. They think the Palestinians should be wherever that state will be, whatever territory the state will be allocated, that's where Palestinians will live. And that, some people do believe that that will include land swaps or evacuations, or, people will have to move to other places, whether it's Jews or whether it's Palestinian, but that's the nature of, dividing the land. Some people, that's a much smaller group, but it's getting some interest in the past few years, actually believe in one land. Actually, among Palestinians, the one state solution is getting a lot of attention, but among Jews, some are trying to think about a different model, whether it's a confederation or all sorts of original new ideas. But most people, first of all, they do not have an answer for your question. They just have this childish fantasy that the problem will just disappear. Um, some people who are, more savvy, that they will say that they think that the Palestinians should stay where they are, or even on less part of the land, but agree to be fully dominated by Israel. And that's where it gets really complicated, because those who believe in basically annexation, right? They're saying these people should be under Israeli control, and there should not be any Palestinian state or any Palestinian even autonomy or none of these things. They actually think that then the problem is, what is their status? Are they citizens or are they not? So of course, those who believe that these people should be second class citizens, like residents, like Palestinians actually are in East Jerusalem, for example. In East Jerusalem, you have Palestinians that are residents of Israel, not citizens. It means that they can basically, for example, vote for the mayor, but not for the government. And that's where we reach the whole discussion about apartheid. And other people are actually, among the Israeli right wing, are actually brave enough to say, no, we think they should get citizenships. We think that, Palestinians could be, they don't really think about the demography part of this, this scenario, but they think, yeah, we should annex everything.
Following on from what you're saying, is the Arab Israeli, this group of, I think they're 20% of the population. How are they different from the Palestinians in their viewpoint?
In terms of their views, you're asking?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
How do they feel about
some are and some are not different. I don't really trust all the polling around this issue because there's a lot of, different political interests when polling that specific population.
yeah.
From, the people I know, like in every group, there you have all sorts of positions. Many identify as Palestinians. Some identify as Israeli Arabs, as you said. Some do that because that's how they really feel. Some are just afraid to describe themselves as Palestinians. That's another reason why the polling is, a bit suspicious to me, because, there's a lot of fear also from, what will happen and if we actually say, our real positions out loud. It's not easy to be a Palestinian within Israel, and there's a lot of scrutiny and censorship, self-censorship, and pressures, on,
Can
of
they vote?
course.
Can you remind us? Can they vote, these people? Or?
Yes, so apart from, like I said, the Palestinians in East Jerusalem who are residents and not citizens, the 20% you're talking about is Palestinian with Israeli citizenship,
Yeah.
and they can vote, and many of them choose to vote for Arab parties. These upcoming elections, which we do not know yet exactly when they'll happen, but in these upcoming elections, there is one united list, which is perceived as a good thing by those who support their participation, their political participation, because there was a lot of fear that the government might try to oust, to use all sorts of legal measures to kick one of these parties off the parliament. So the fact that they unite in one list makes it um, more difficult for the government to prevent them from participating in the political game. But on the other hand, that means that you have all sorts of worldviews squished, into this one party, all sorts of ideologies, because Palestinians within Israel, they can be, some of them are traditionally and historically communist, very secular, some of, and, anti-imperialist and such, and some of them are the total opposite. They're Islamist and they part of the Islamist list to the parliament. So they're very, very different groups of people forced to kind of unite into one list just on the basis of being Arab.
Now, I just wanted to ask you about the October the 7th attack. So I sent you a question about how it seems very difficult, out in the world outside, and certainly many people have commented about that. That first of all, Hamas would think that they could have done this brazen attack without, the full repercussions of the IDF and the Israeli society, if you like. And then, you know, paradoxically, why did the Israeli government not know it was going to happen? There seemed to be a lot of evidence that it was going on. And your colleague Amir, who I spoke to, said they felt the Israeli government let them down. He was almost more critical of them than Hamas. So how do you explain this contradiction, seemingly, or this kind of dichotomy of the situation?
I don't know if it's a contradiction, but what did Hamas think? I have no idea what they thought. I assume, they, if they're not totally, I don't know if they didn't think of it as a religious war, totally, brainwashed regarding the consequences. Of course, they had to know that this will be war. Um, some people, we had someone interview some people within Hamas who, some people who they went to Egypt when the war started, and someone had conversations with them about what they know that Hamas knew, and what they were saying is that some of them were convinced that they're going to conquer parts of Israel, and that and that they will actually win with this plan. So I mean, I guess a lot of people will research what they thought, but on the Israeli side, how come Israel didn't know? I mean, they fucked up. It was a massive, massive, massive failure in terms of intelligence. There was a paradigm, there was this one very one thought that everyone had, and by the way, that was shared both by the mainstream conception that Israel had was shared by Benjamin Netanyahu, was shared by the so-called changed government that was after and before him, and shared also by almost all the establishment of the security forces, which is that as long as you let Qatari money flow into Gaza, as long as the Hamas leadership is covered with dollars and that's and has a comfortable life, then they don't have an incentive to radicalize or to deteriorate the situation. That was the conception within, I think, the most of the also by the way in America that supported this, also in most countries in Europe, everyone was supporting. Let's calm the situation down by pouring money into Gaza. So all sides thought that but some people thought that some people think about it as economic peace, which now I think we need to think differently about. But that if that actually could lead into diplomatic solution, etc. If the economical situation is better or worse in a certain place. But other people thought it's just a band-aid, that you can just, give some money to calm down the situation for a short while, and then later maybe there will be war, but not at this moment. So most people did not anticipate this because the intelligence failure, but also the conception that they had.
So they didn't think it was possible or it should happen.
Even if they thought that it was possible, they didn't know that it was happening at that moment.
Hmm. Yeah. So they thought it was going to be down the road sometime. Yeah. So the now I just want to ask you about Zionism, which is got obviously very
An easy
important.
one, an easy one. Yeah.
An easy one, okay.
Easy question.
Okay, tell me,
Yeah.
tell me what it means to Haaretz, and Haaretz is very proud of being a Zionist newspaper. It says in the mission statement, because Zionism has in the West has some negative views about it's kind of associated with the present kind of aggression of the Israeli government. What does it mean?
Yeah, I think it kind of, a lot of times it kind of kidnaps the conversation. That's why also, when I said before, words like Zionism, apartheid, genocide also, like there are certain words that people tend to think about the words more than they actually think about the reality. Some people care more about the wording. Of course, words are important, and I'm a journalist, and we use words to shape realities. But I think there's a tendency to kind of like get lost in the wording and not the actual ideas. So for, Zionism, I think for most liberal Zionists out there in Israel, and also the publisher of Haaretz, basically means the revival of the Jewish people in Israel. And, there's certain phrases like Jews' right to, exist in Israel, or the right of Israel to exist, or all sorts of things that I also think, are kind of vague. But basically, it means that there is such a thing as the state of Israel now, these days. Jews already live within that state. So supporting or not supporting making all of that disappear is now Zionism. Because if you think about, I mean, if you think about it, it's not that you can talk now about changing what happened 100 years ago. It's not that the discussion today about Zionism is about undoing everything that already happened. When I talk to my Palestinian friends, about these issues, we always, it all comes down to the point where, okay, we're here, you're here. We can talk about the past a lot, and the past is important for reconciliation and lots of things, but it is the situation now. We're not going to change the past. We need to think forward. So, thinking forward, I think basically when you hear someone who's a liberal Zionist in Israel saying, I believe that Israel has the right to exist, they're basically saying, we're here, we're Israelis, we're not going to go anywhere. So now we need to find a solution. And it's the same, with the other side. Those people that call themselves liberal Zionists, they also believe that there are Palestinians, that they're there, and they're going to stay there, and there needs to be, hence, a two-state solution.
What is your best? I know it's difficult to talk about peace, when this war is going on with Iran, and it seems there's no quick solution to this. This is a whole new thing, isn't it? That's made life even more complicated for everyone. But what is your best hope for peace? How do you think it might come about?
I just wrote a column in which I shared that I had this nostalgic moment where I was thinking about, a lot of people are now kind of like thinking about the 90s. It's a whole trend now, 90s are coming back. And I was thinking about the songs that we used to sing in schools in the 90s. And that was like the peak of, hope for peace. And we used to sing all these like songs about peace. There were so many of them. And I asked my friends, what are your children singing now in schools in Israel? And they said basically their answers were all sorts of like more religious songs, not about peace. I mean, the word peace is it's almost erased entirely from the conversation. But again, I think it's not what you call it, is what you actually do. So, okay, let's say that Israelis are not going to talk and sing about peace anymore because it sounds naive, because it's not trendy, it's because it's gone. But how did we actually free the hostages from Gaza? It was a diplomatic agreement. I mean, okay, diplomatic agreement is not peace in the lovey-dovey sense of it, right? It's not like all roses and great, but it is an agreement that you do with who? Who did we negotiate to free these hostages? Your enemy, Hamas. So we might not call it peace in the future, but is it possible to have diplomatic solutions to the hell that we're in? Yes, of course it is.
So there you go. So you're hopeful for the future in that sense.
I have to be.